101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is the author of the book Neurospicy, and other than Mr. John O'Shea. Welcome, Mr. John, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, John O'Shea. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, and coming into summer here, so we have a hot Christmas looking forward to. I'm the author of Neurospicy, which is a book that I wrote after 35 years of marriage with my wife. She asked for a separation due to the roller coaster ride that she had experienced with me because of my ADHD and dyslexia. And so I forged this book, and I've self-published the book. But I'm also very, very supportive of education across a previous book I've written, and I've also done a lot of education in regards to kids programs and so forth. So yeah, it's an interesting read. It's not a how to fix things. It's really a positive story. And also some of the negative things that happen with being ADHD and dyslexia, because it is a powerful situation that your brain works in this certain way, but it's also your kryptonite. So it can be quite detrimental and negative. So I've tried to put a spin on both sides of it.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. John, through your Neurospicy. Thank you, thank you. So let's start with the Neurospicy metaphor. The title is brilliant and provocative. What does spicy uniquely capture about the neurodivergent experience that more clinical or neutral terms miss?
Yeah, look, it is actually a different way of presenting it. And even if you have a look at the cover, my son painted that cover, and that's the brain sort of, like a jigsaw puzzle when you throw it out onto the table when you first go to start it. That's the sort of thought process that I deal with on a regular basis. So if we look at the word ADHD, attention deficit disorder, it's actually not the right word at all. It's not an attention deficit disorder. In fact, it's a complete opposite. You have an overload of information. Your your thought processes are firing at a million miles an hour, and you're continually getting distracted by things that mean that you don't necessarily seem to be focusing, but it's because there's so much activity happening in your brain that you get called either distracted, or you find it hard to focus. Where in fact, it's probably the opposite, and that is that we are focusing. It's just that there's a lot of information happening up in your head simultaneously.
Yes. And Mr. John, how do you balance honoring the real challenges of being neurodivergent with this celebratory, empowering tone that Spicy implies? Is it possible to hold both truth at once?
Yeah, it actually is. And that's what I've really come to terms with, is that if you spend your whole life, especially your childhood, with being told that you're not very good, that you're not great at reading and writing, that you're distracted, you can't focus, you start to build a picture that that's who you are. And so it does become something that you have to manage later in life, because if you don't focus on being able to be a little bit more disciplined at things that you know that you need to be at, then it can be overwhelming, and you can get very, very frustrated very, very easily. So the things that I do regularly is I regularly meditate, and I regularly go to the gym. And those two activities really allow me to quieten down my brain and allow me to start the day in a more calm and precise way, then instead of getting onto electronics or onto the phone or on a computer and getting the workday started, I actually start with self reflection, focus on what I'm going to achieve that day, and then have a little bit of quiet time, and then have some physical exertion. And that allows me to be a lot more focused during the day.
Interesting, Mr. John. Interesting indeed. Nourish Spicy feels like a reclamation. Why is it important for you to create and popularize, yes, popularize this new term with the community?
I think the problem with dyslexia and ADHD is that they have a certain connotation with failure, and I don't see it being a failure at all. I actually see being neurodiverse or neo spicy, as I'd like to call it, because you are different. You are a little bit unique in the way in which you process information. But at the same time, that is very, very positive if it's put in the right environment. So if we have a look at something, a statistic like NASA employ up to 50% of their employees are dyslexic. So they are spicy. And the reason that they employ these people is because they think outside the box. If you look at entrepreneurs across the globe, around about 30 to 40% of those are either ADHD or dyslexic. And a lot of times when you are ADHD, you are dyslexic and vice versa. It's around about 60%. So you can be dyslexic in its own right and you can be ADHD in its own right. But the majority of times you are actually both. And so you have this unique ability to see outside of the box and you have this amazing brain that fires a lot of ideas simultaneously, but it's the art of being able to control that. And so what I call it is a superpower. Being neo-spicy is a superpower, but it's also your kryptonite. And when I say it's your kryptonite, is it can lead you into negative situations, negative feelings, doubting yourself, feeling that you're out of control, that you're not concentrating on certain tasks, you get distracted and so forth. But being neo spicy, I see as very, very positive. It's not something that I would wish on anyone at a young age, especially going through the education system. But later in life, it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm grateful every day that I am neo spicy.
Yes, be grateful in everything, people, and stop complaining. If a reader takes away one fundamental shift in perspective from your book, what do you hope that shift is?
I think the positive side of being neo spicy and actually addressing that strength and actually recognizing that it is a strength, and then how do you then maximize that strength? Because no different to anything that we do in life, if you go to the gym, you're going to get fitter. If you play extra a music instrument and you play it a lot, you're going to get better. The same in anything that we do in life, the more we do it and the more we understand it and the more research that we do about it, the better we are at it. And I believe that that's one of the things that this book explains is that it explores the different ways in which being neurospicy have affected my life and then how I've actually dealt with those things and then turned them into a positive. Not always are they positive though. I've had a lot of failures in my life as well, but then also trying to turn those into a positive is also important. And it is difficult when you have a brain that is thinking the way we think and operate the way we think, both socially, in business, with family, with friends. It is something you have to really concentrate on and you have to get to know. And so that's the thing that I really want to leave the legacy of this book is to understand it, to focus on it, but to recognize it, that it is a strength, but it's also can be your kryptonite.
A legacy indeed to the world. And thank you, Mr. John, for the legacy that you even to us. Will you share your own personal spice blend, your neurotype mix, and how the journey to naming it changed your self understanding?
So the actual name of it came through from a friend, and I didn't realize how popular the word neurospicy was when I got informed about it. Um, but if you understand how a dyslexic thinks, dyslexia is again a misunderstanding or mislabeling of the actual real thing that happens. Dyslexia is Latin for difficulty with English. And yes, being dyslexic, you do have difficulty with English. I get words upside down. I can't write very well. The thoughts in my head to go into pen and then into paper, extremely difficult. I can have the thought up here, but I can't seem to get it to flow into a written format, even if I'm typing. When I'm reading, it has the opposite effect. I may be reading, but I won't hear it. I won't be able to understand it. It mixes up and it jumbles around. And then if you have the ADHD on top of that, which is then firing a whole lot of information and getting distracted and so forth, that makes it very, very like spicy on food. You can sometimes put too much spice on and it doesn't taste as nice as when you do the nice balance. So the neo spicy, I believe, is something that I enjoy spicy food. I like to have alternatives, and I think that that's where we're sort of coming from with this book is having a look at the alternatives and how embracing those alternatives are really important, and embracing them in a positive way is really important, and recognizing that you are unique, but you have something which is very special, but only if you know how to manage it.
Yes, unique. We are unique people, and let's celebrate for being unique.
Yeah.
And Mr. John, was there a specific moment or story where you realized your brain was not broken, but was instead operating on a different, valid, and potentially powerful operating system?
I've always had the understanding that I struggled with English and school, and in fact, I left school and couldn't read and write very well at all. Um, and I actually, it's in the book. I actually got into trouble in Hawaii coming back from Canada. In fact, your homeland. I was in Vancouver skiing, and I was coming back in through customs. And normally, I would get someone to help me with the customs or immigration form. Just the person sitting next to me. I'd fallen asleep. I didn't fill that in properly. When I got to the customs, the first person said, "Look, you have to go back and fill that in properly because you haven't done it very well at all." So I went back. I tried to do it again. I don't think I improved on it very much at all. And when I handed it back to the next customs officer, when she handed it back to me, she said, "Oh, my 4-year-old son could fill this in better than you." And it was at that particular point that I lost my temper. I lost control. I got in a lot of trouble at customs. I eventually got out. But that was a trigger for me to stop hiding behind the fact is that I couldn't read and write very well, and that was okay because I was surviving. That I actually went in and started really understanding how and what could I do to improve my situation. And I think at that point was the turning point in my life at the age of 24. Now, not being able to read and write and fill in a customs immigration form at 24 just shows how much I was behind or how illiterate I was compared to the average person.
Mr. John Aki struggles may or masking to fit in. How does a neurospicy philosophy provide a framework for moving from exhausting masking to intentional, empowered self-expression?
Yeah, and it is important to understand that there is different levels of ADHD and different levels of dyslexia. Some people can say, "Oh, I'm dyslexic because I get my words upside down or I spell some words wrong." But if you looked at, from 1 to 10, I'm on sort of an 8 on both. So I'm
Yes.
very dyslexic and I'm very ADHD. And it is important that recognizing that different levels maybe have to have different methods of actually coping with it. I actually do an enormous amount of physical activity when I'm thinking, when I'm trying to solve problems. I'll hold a golf club, a tennis ball. I'll actually need to be physically moving. And that really does help me a lot to calm down the body in regards to letting my mind stay a lot more focused than if I'm sitting still or I'm just behind a desk. I find it a lot more difficult. And in fact, that is something that I recommend highly for a lot of people is to start to learn to do things like juggling, skipping, exercises, brain exercises where you can just do simple hand exercises where you do rhythms and so forth. And I think that that's really important, but everyone has a different level of it. And so for me, the meditation and the gym is really, really important to start my day without electronics, without the computer, without anything that's going to overly stimulate it so that I can plan what's going to happen for the rest of the day.
Mr. John, as an author, what are your short term and long term goals?
Good question. The next book in my website, which you can visit or your guests can visit neospicy.life, that's going to have a section where I'm collecting stories already from people that have read my book and they can add their story onto the website. Then once I've got enough stories, I'm going to publish that on behalf of everybody and I'll pay for the publication, I'll pay for the marketing, but all of the royalties will go back to whoever contributed their story so that I'm giving back to the community. And then the next thing that I'm working on at the moment, which I'm just pulling together, and that is a course for kids aged between 4 and 12 to teach them about what is the reality of being neo-spicy, dyslexic and ADHD, and to encourage them about the positive side of it, because during those early formative years, I believe that there is not enough energy put into the positive. It's all the negative. You can't concentrate. Johnny's a disruption. Johnny can't read and write very well. But they're never giving them any tools to really help them explore and understand what is actually going on in their mind. And that's my next phase.
Well, good luck to your goals, Mr. John, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
I would embrace it. I would walk around and champion it and get rid of the negative thoughts and try and recognize that you are unique, but you have something that a lot of people would love to have, and that is being able to think of things differently on different levels simultaneously. I'd embrace the superpower that you have and understand that it's unique and you are going to do things differently, but that's okay.
Yes, that's okay, people. Thank you for the advice,
No
Mr.
problem.
John. And would you please recommend a book or books that influence you, Johnny?
Some of the books that I really like and that I've in the back of the book I've got a number of them. Um, Letting Go, I think, is a really good book. It teaches you about letting go of negative thoughts, negative feelings. The Psychology of Success, which is teaching you about planning, strategy, a lot of this stuff we all know, but it's really nice to get a reminder of it. And I listen to these on podcasts. But probably my favourite at the moment is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, who's the father of the Gladiator movie. That book is amazing about somebody that was probably writing it under feather and ink and was at the top of the world and is such a caring and loving man and had such beautiful thoughts. So I can't recommend that enough. And that's Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Yes, and thank you for the recommended book, Mr. John. And The book likely touches on the fourth path to diagnosis. What is your perspective on the value and the limitations of formal diagnosis in the world that is often ill equipped and understand it?
Um, I'm not sure if I fully understood the question. Can you say that again?
Yeah, so let's talk about the system, society, and
Oh,
empowerment.
yeah,
So
yeah,
the book likely touches on the fraud path of the diagnosis. What is your perspective on the value and the limitations of formal diagnosis in a world that often ill-equipped to understand it?
yeah. And I think the world is ignored the fact that 30% of the community is pretty much illiterate, 40% are ADHD and dyslexic, and yet you've got an education system that doesn't spend 1 hour on it. So you've got a system that's automatically built, one, that it doesn't recognize it, two, that it doesn't know how to manage it and focus on it. And then the people that are coming out and doing the diagnosis of it are the people that have gone through the same system. And that's how you get these names, dyslexia. Well, it's not dyslexia at all. ADHD, it's not that at all. So the diagnosis process of it, I believe, is probably over medical, under solution. So it doesn't have a lot of basic solutions that could easily take away from the trauma that people have when they're found out to be ADHD or dyslexic. It's seen as a negative, where it should be seen as an absolute positive, and that you are so lucky to have this diagnosis. And then I think a lot of the solutions around it is just drugs, whether it's Ritalin or so forth. Yet there is nothing about the actual practical process of how to actually manage it. What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? How you can actually do some things that make your life a lot more balanced, such as diet, such as exercise, such as meditation. And all of those things would easily replace any need for Ritalin or any other medical diagnosis. But I think the education system in itself has failed the community and it failed people like me because they have not taken any time or any energy to train their teachers and their staff about how to actually maximize the benefits of people that are neo spicy like myself.
Interesting and empowering answer, Mr. John. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in sixth season as well. Geography 101, Love Letters, Movie 101, Review Music 101, our fourth season, Science 101, Sex 101, second season, and my baby podcast, Mental Health 101, Law 101, Bible Verses 101, and Entrepreneurship 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. John, imagine a world that fully embraces neurodiversity. What does that look, sound, and feel like on a day?
Yeah, I feel that we have great sporting facilities, we have great universities, but we don't have a neurodiverse educational based system. And I would like to see that both in the schools and at university level, that there is specific focus on neurodiversity. Because if you think about it, if NASA's employing 50% and they want them to be neo spicy, 40% of them are entrepreneurs that are running the most successful businesses in the world. Why don't we have a complete reshape of how the education system deals with this, as well as university? And that's where I'd like to see a acceptance of being neurodiverse, and that actually recognise that it has its own credibility, and therefore it can get its own university and its own education system.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. John,
Thank you.
through your Norris Spicy. So can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Sorry, what was that?
Can you please invite our listeners to
Yeah,
support your
come
book?
to the if you come to the website Neo Spicy, you can see some other stories that are on there. You can see some photos about some of the stories that I have. But there's also anyone that's Neo Spicy. I want to hear your story, and let's hope we can get it published, and that you're then going and doing the next interview here with 101 and talking about your own book, which will help get out there.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. John O'Shea because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering Nourish Spicy will rise. So, Mr. John, thank you
Yep.
so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Modicom people, see you soon.